Some of the most powerful love stories begin with duty rather than choice. The evening light spilled through the wide windows of the Carter family's Harlem penthouse, painting the polished floors in amber glow. Imani Carter, 28 years old and already a respected art curator, stood in disbelief as her father slid a contract across the table. Jerome Carter, known in Wall Street circles for his ruthless negotiations, fixed his sharp gaze on her and declared that the family business could only be saved through a merger with Johnson Global. Imani's chest tightened as her eyes ran across the legal lines binding her to a man she had never met. Her voice, though steady, trembled with anger as she asked if she was nothing more than a bargaining chip. Her mother Denise reached for her arm gently, reminding her that Malik Johnson was powerful, respected, and admired. But Imani snapped back that he was still a stranger, and this was not the 19th century. Jerome's jaw hardened as he reminded her that 3 generations of Carters had built this legacy, and asked if she was willing to watch it collapse when she had the power to save it. The pressure weighed heavy on her shoulders, but finally she lifted her chin and told them she would not consider anything without meeting the man first. Relief softened her father's face as he told her Malik was hosting a charity gala at the Apollo Theater and they were invited. The following evening, Harlem pulsed with life as the Apollo glowed with crystal lights and soft jazz. Inside, New York's black elite gathered in elegance, champagne flutes in hand. Imani stood near the marble fountain in an emerald gown that drew eyes yet made her feel like a queen prepared for sacrifice. Her mother whispered that he had arrived, and when she turned her head, her breath caught. Malik Johnson entered with a presence that drew the room's attention instantly. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, his stride carried the weight of authority and his deep bronze skin shone beneath the chandeliers. His sharp jawline, intense eyes, and quiet smile made him look as though he belonged on the cover of a magazine. His gaze lifted and locked on hers across the crowded hall, and for a suspended moment everything else faded. Breaking away from admirers, he walked straight toward her. His voice was rich and commanding as he greeted her, and when she extended her hand, instead of shaking it, he brought it to his lips and asked her to call him Malik. The spark of electricity startled her, but she steadied herself, reminding her heart that this was business. She told him her father had spoken of a merger. His lips curved in a teasing smile as his eyes roamed deliberately before returning to hers, suggesting they continue their discussion somewhere more private. His hand at the small of her back guided her toward the balcony, a touch light but firm, and the warmth of it sent shivers through her even as she resisted the thought. Outside, the Harlem skyline glittered in the night, but Malik's gaze never left her. Imani faced him boldly and declared that she was there to decide whether she could live with the arrangement her father had proposed. Malik's tone was calm and laced with amusement as he asked about her conditions. She listed respect and autonomy, making it clear she would never be a silent trophy. He acknowledged her words before leaning closer and asking about passion. The single word lingered between them, heavy with suggestion. She told him she did not expect love in such an arrangement, but he countered that love and passion were not the same, and insisted that every contract should be tested before it was signed. Her eyes widened as she realized his meaning, and when she accused him of being outrageous, his answer was smooth and unapologetic. He proposed a honeymoon before marriage, 2 weeks on his private island in Jamaica, to test whether they were compatible in all the ways that mattered. Outrage rose in her chest, but so did something she refused to name. She demanded to know what would happen if she refused, and he answered without hesitation that then there would be no deal, no merger, no saving the Carter empire. His eyes softened as he told her to think of it as an opportunity. 2 weeks to decide if she could imagine waking beside him for the rest of her life. The Harlem lights shimmered around her as she struggled against the storm of duty and desire rising within her. Finally, she told him she needed time. His smile was slow, assured, and knowing as he reminded her the offer expired at midnight. Then he walked away, leaving her alone on the balcony with the skyline glittering and the weight of the choice pressing on her heart. Imani Carter knew her life was about to change forever, though she could not yet see how deeply. The roar of engines hummed softly beneath the sleek private jet that cut through the skies above drifting clouds. Imani Carter sat against the supple leather seat, gazing out of the window as the city she knew disappeared beneath her. She could hardly believe that only a day after meeting Malik Johnson at the Apollo Gala, she had agreed to step onto his plane, bound for his private island in Jamaica. The choice felt reckless, yet something deep within her insisted she had to know the truth of him before binding her life to his. Second thoughts? Malik's voice pulled her back from the window. He sat across from her, relaxed in linen trousers and a pale blue shirt that made his eyes shine brighter. The casual elegance was disarming, and it struck her again how easily he carried power without ever needing to announce it. "About a dozen per minute," she admitted, lifting her glass of sparkling water. She had refused wine. She wanted her thoughts sharp around him. Malik's lips curved into a smile, one that carried more warmth than mockery. "I appreciate honesty," he said, closing the laptop on his lap. His full attention shifted to her as though nothing else in the world existed. "Tell me, Imani, what scares you most about this arrangement?" The question caught her off guard. She had expected him to flirt, to tease, maybe even to apply subtle pressure. She had not expected sincerity. After a moment, she answered quietly, "Losing myself. Waking up years from now and realizing I've become nothing but a shadow of someone else's world." Something flickered in his eyes, softening his strong exterior. "I have no interest in shadows," he said firmly. "A wilted flower doesn't inspire me. I want a partner who blooms in her own light." Imani studied him, her brow tightening. "Pretty words. But the contract my father showed me left no space for that. You'd be in control of everything, including me." Malik leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, his voice low and steady. "That was your father's contract. I have my own." He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder, and slid it across to her. Suspicion gave way to curiosity. Imani opened the folder and her eyes widened as she scanned the terms. This agreement was entirely different. It protected her independence, secured her career at the gallery she loved, and even included clauses that ensured her family's company would survive regardless of the marriage. She lifted her gaze to him in disbelief. "Why would you agree to this? What do you get out of it?" His eyes held hers without wavering. "Maybe I'm tired of people who only see my money. Maybe I want someone who challenges me. Or maybe—" His lips curved into a slow smile. "I simply find you irresistible and I'm willing to negotiate favorable terms to keep you close." Heat rose to her cheeks despite her attempt to hide it. "You don't even know me." "That's what these 2 weeks are for," he said simply, as though the answer was obvious. The island appeared on the horizon hours later, an emerald jewel rising from the turquoise sea. When the helicopter carried them from the main landing strip to the cliffside villa, Imani's breath caught. The view was a vision torn from a dream. White sand beaches below, endless blue waters stretching to the horizon, lush green forest swaying in the wind, and perched above it all, a modern villa of glass and stone designed to blur the line between sky and sea. "It's breathtaking," she murmured as the warm Caribbean air embraced her like a soft touch. "I designed it myself," Malik said, watching her reaction with satisfaction. "Architecture was my first love before business consumed me." She turned to him, surprised. "You're full of secrets, Malik Johnson." "Just wait," he replied, his tone low and intimate. Inside, the villa unfolded in open spaces, sunlight flooding through glass walls, sleek furniture blending with the natural surroundings. Malik led her down a long corridor, his hand hovering at her back as though the lightest touch was all he needed to guide her. He opened a door to reveal a private suite, spacious and serene, with its own terrace overlooking the ocean. "I thought you might appreciate your own space," he said. The thoughtfulness startled her. "Thank you," she replied softly. He tilted his head, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Disappointed? Were you expecting me to drag you into my room on the first night?" The corner of her mouth curved despite herself. "You don't strike me as the caveman type." "No," he said, stepping closer until the space around her seemed to shrink, his gaze locking onto hers with intensity. "What type do I strike you as, Imani Carter?" Her pulse quickened, and before she could stop herself, the words slipped out. "The patient predator type. The kind that enjoys the hunt as much as the capture." His smile was slow, appreciative, very perceptive, he murmured, then stepped back. "Dinner is at 8 on the terrace. Wear whatever makes you feel beautiful." When he left, Imani sat on the edge of the bed, her heart unsteady. This was not what she had prepared for. She had expected a cold negotiation, perhaps even unwanted advances. But instead, Malik Johnson was proving unpredictable, layered, dangerous, and far more captivating than she wanted him to be. She whispered to herself that this was only business, only 2 weeks. But the words sounded hollow against the beauty of the island and the man waiting just down the hall. Dinner that evening was nothing like what Imani had imagined. Instead of a staff of servants or a catered spread, Malik surprised her with a meal he had prepared himself. The scent of saffron and garlic drifted across the open terrace as the table glowed beneath string lights that twinkled like stars. The crashing of waves below set the rhythm while a cool breeze carried the warmth of the tropics around them. On the table before her sat a steaming pan of seafood paella, rich with shrimp and mussels caught fresh by local fishermen. "You cook?" Imani asked, her brows lifting as she tasted the first bite. The flavors exploded across her tongue, seasoned perfectly, warm and comforting. Another secret smile tugged at his lips as he poured her a glass of crisp white wine. "Cooking grounds me. Business is abstract, numbers and projections. But food is immediate. Either you create something beautiful or you don't." "Like art," she murmured, noting the connection. "Exactly like art," Malik agreed, his eyes bright with appreciation that she had understood so quickly. "Both are about creating experiences." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady, unreadable yet charged. "So tell me, Imani, what experiences would you like to have while you're here?" Her heart skipped at the double meaning layered beneath his words. She chose caution. "I'd love to see the island. I've always been drawn to nature." His voice softened, carrying that undertone that made her pulse race. "We have trails that lead to a waterfall in the heart of the island. It's spectacular. We'll go tomorrow." The conversation flowed like the wine that shimmered in their glasses. He asked about her work at the gallery, and unlike so many men she had met, he listened intently, leaning in as she spoke of emerging artists, the importance of preserving culture, the spark of creativity that fueled her passion. His responses were thoughtful, genuine, revealing a side of him she hadn't expected. A man who valued more than profit margins and power. She laughed at his dry wit, surprised by how easily it came. Malik had a way of slipping in remarks that caught her off guard, remarks that carried not just intelligence but charm. For the first time since this arrangement began, Imani felt her defenses crack. By the time they finished dessert, tropical fruits paired with homemade vanilla ice cream, she realized something that unsettled her deeply. She was enjoying his company, not enduring it, not tolerating it for the sake of her family's business, but enjoying it in a way that felt dangerously real. "You look surprised," Malik said, studying her face in the gentle glow of lantern light. She smiled faintly. I didn't expect this to feel so real." "Because it isn't just business," he said quietly, reaching across the table to take her hand. His thumb traced small circles against her skin, a touch both intimate and electric. "There are practical reasons we're here, yes. But I wouldn't have suggested this if I wasn't drawn to you, Imani. And it's not only physical attraction, it's something more." Her walls trembled at the honesty in his voice, and she quickly pulled her hand back, rising from her chair. "It's late. Thank you for dinner. It was lovely." His gaze softened and he rose with her. "Too much too soon?" She nodded, grateful that he sensed the storm inside her without forcing it. "We have time," he said gently. 13 more days to be exact. As she returned to her suite, her thoughts spun in chaos. She had told herself this trip was nothing but a test, a transaction, a path to save her family. But as the waves rolled against the shore and the echo of his words lingered in her mind, she feared she was walking straight into something far more powerful than she had planned. The days that followed unfolded like a dream woven from sun and salt and laughter. Each morning the island greeted them with skies painted in bright blue and seas that shimmered like glass. Malik kept his word, guiding Imani through the trails that twisted into the heart of the island until they reached a waterfall that thundered into a crystal pool below. Without hesitation, she slipped out of her sandals and dove in, the cold water shocking her skin but filling her with exhilaration. Malik followed, the strength of his strokes cutting through the current as his deep laugh echoed against the stone cliffs. They splashed and played like children, and for the first time since their deal was proposed, Imani forgot about contracts, legacies, and expectations. She was simply a woman alive in the moment, and he was simply a man sharing it with her. They spent afternoons exploring hidden coves in a small motorboat, Malik's large hands guiding hers on the wheel as he taught her how to steer through the waves. His touches lingered longer than necessary, and each time her heart betrayed her, beating too quickly, wanting too much. They snorkeled through coral reefs alive with color, swimming side by side as schools of fish glittered around them like living jewels. At night, the air filled with the scent of jasmine as they returned to the villa, where dinner became a shared ritual, sometimes prepared by him, sometimes by her, always playful competitions that ended in laughter and teasing remarks. But beneath the humor and lightness, something deeper was taking root. Their conversation stretched into long hours over candlelight and wine, shifting from stories of childhood to heated debates about art, legacy, and the lives they dreamed of living. He was not the shallow tycoon she had imagined, nor was she the silent daughter he had expected. With every revelation she saw layers to him, and with every question he asked, she felt him seeing through layers of her that no one else had bothered to notice. Yet the unspoken tension between them was constant. Every glance lingered, every brush of his hand against hers carried fire. Every time he said her name, it was as though he had discovered the secret to make it sound like music. Malik never pressed, never demanded, but the desire in his eyes was unhidden, simmering beneath the surface of every moment they shared. On their fifth night, after a dinner of fresh lobster grilled on the terrace, they walked along the moonlit beach. The sand was cool beneath their feet, the ocean whispering secrets with every wave. The air between them thickened, charged, as though the island itself waited for what was about to happen. "You're driving me insane, you know," Malik said suddenly, stopping to face her. The silver glow of the moon sculpted his features, and the hunger in his eyes made her heart race. Imani's voice wavered as she asked, "How so?" He stepped closer, his tone rough with restraint. "Every day I discover something new about you that makes me want you more. Your passion for art, your quick wit, your laughter, the way you bite your lip when you're deep in thought. You have no idea what you're doing to me." Her breath caught, her body trembling as he cupped her cheek. "Tell me to stop, Imani," he whispered, his voice taut with control. "Say the word and I will. We'll continue like this, just enjoying each other's company. No expectations. Just say the word." But the word would not come. Instead, she leaned into his touch, surrendering to the pull she had fought for days. "I don't want you to stop," she whispered, the admission both terrifying and liberating. His lips found hers, soft at first, then deep and demanding as though he had waited years for this moment. His arms encircled her, pulling her against him, while her hands slid into his hair, desperate to anchor herself in the storm he unleashed. The kiss grew fierce, hungry, claiming, and yet beneath the fire there was tenderness, a reverence that made her knees weak. When they broke apart, both gasping, the look in his eyes reflected not just desire but something unspoken, something that mirrored the confusion and wonder in her own heart. She didn't speak. She only took his hand and led him back toward the villa, each step across the cool sand carrying her closer not just to intimacy, but to a choice she had never thought she would make. The ocean whispered behind them as their shadows merged under the moonlight. Two lives that had begun as a bargain now colliding in a way that felt like destiny. The villa was silent except for the distant rhythm of waves crashing against the cliffs, a steady drumbeat that seemed to echo the pounding of Imani's heart. She led Malik through the open glass doors, the moonlight spilling across the polished floor as though it were guiding them toward the inevitable. Every step felt heavier than the last, every breath slower, as if the air itself knew what was about to happen. Inside the bedroom, Malik stopped her with a gentle pull, his hand tightening around hers. His eyes, dark and intense, searched her face one last time. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice raw, the control in it strained almost to breaking. Her answer came not with words but with the way her body leaned into his, with the way her lips found his again, soft at first, then urgent, as if she had finally surrendered to everything she had tried to resist. The decision was no longer in her mind. It was in the way her pulse raced, in the fire that burned through her veins, in the unshakable truth that she didn't want to fight this any longer. His restraint snapped. The kiss deepened, hungry and consuming, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her flush against the hard strength of his body. She gasped softly against his mouth as his fingers traced the curve of her back, igniting sparks everywhere he touched. Her hands moved over his broad shoulders into his hair, exploring, kneading, learning him by touch. Clothing fell away like secrets, discarded carelessly as though neither of them had patience for barriers anymore. He laid her down on the bed with a reverence that contradicted the urgency in his movements, his gaze drinking her in as though she were something rare, something precious. Beautiful, he murmured, the word reverent, not as flattery but as fact, as truth. His lips traced a path down her neck, across her collarbone, leaving heat in their wake. Every kiss, every touch was both a claim and a question, and with every sigh, every arch of her body, she answered him. The air between them was electric, charged with need, but also laced with something softer, something she hadn't expected. Tenderness. When they finally came together, the world narrowed to nothing but sensation, every movement a blend of fire and devotion. The rhythm of the ocean outside seemed to match the rhythm they found with each other, a natural tide pulling them closer, binding them in a way that no contract ever could. Time lost meaning. All that mattered was the way he whispered her name as though it were sacred, the way her fingers clutched at his skin as though he were her anchor, the way their bodies spoke truths that words never could. When it was over, they lay tangled in the sheets, their breaths ragged, their skin damp, their hearts racing not only from passion, but from the weight of what had just happened. Malik's hand rested protectively on her waist, his thumb brushing gentle circles as though he couldn't let her go. Imani stared at the ceiling, her chest rising and falling, realizing that everything had shifted. This was no longer just about family legacy or business deals. It had become something far more dangerous, far more real. She turned her head to find his gaze already fixed on her, his eyes softened with an emotion she couldn't name. "You should sleep," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Tomorrow we start again." But Imani knew as she drifted into uneasy dreams that nothing would ever be the same again. What had begun as a test had turned into something binding, not on paper but in the heart. The days that followed unfolded like a blur of discovery, both of the island and of each other. Mornings began with sunlight spilling through the glass walls of the villa, the scent of salt carried in on the breeze, and the warmth of Malik's arms still wrapped around Imani from the night before. What had started as a single surrender quickly became a rhythm, a pull that neither of them seemed willing to resist. They woke tangled in sheets and in each other, the intimacy of the night flowing seamlessly into the glow of the day. Their afternoons were filled with adventure. They hiked to hidden lagoons where the water shimmered emerald beneath the sun, dove into pools so clear they could see the sandy floor beneath their feet, and wandered through trails where birdsong echoed in the canopy above. Malik taught her how to handle the motorboat with patience, his hand steadying hers on the throttle, his voice low against her ear, his presence always near enough to ignite sparks. They snorkeled over reefs alive with color, their laughter bubbling through their masks as schools of fish darted around them like shards of light. But it wasn't only the adventures that left her breathless. It was the quiet moments, the way Malik listened when she spoke of art, his questions never superficial but always thoughtful, probing into her passions as though he wanted to see her fully. It was the way their conversations flowed into the night, stretching across hours and bottles of wine, weaving between stories of childhood, dreams of the future, and debates that sparked fire in both of them. Every evening they cooked together, playfully competing to outdo each other's creations. Sometimes it ended with laughter, sometimes with teasing, but always it ended with the magnetic pull drawing them back into each other's arms. The passion between them grew into a living thing, alive in every glance and every accidental brush of fingers, in the way his voice dropped when he said her name, in the way her body reacted without permission. Malik never rushed her, never demanded more than she was willing to give, yet his desire was undeniable. It was in his eyes whenever he looked at her, in the way he held her, in the way he kissed her as though the world itself could fall away, and he would still never have enough. And slowly, dangerously, she felt herself responding not just with her body but with her heart. On the fifth night, as they walked barefoot along the moonlit beach after dinner, the tension between them finally reached its breaking point. The ocean whispered against the shore, the silver glow of the moon painting the sand in soft light. Malik stopped suddenly, turning to face her, his jaw tight, his eyes burning. "You're driving me crazy," he said, his voice rough with need. "Every day I learn something new about you that makes me want you more. The way you fight for your passions, the way you laugh without holding back, the way you look at the world with fire in your eyes. You undo me, Imani." Her heart raced, her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. His hand rose, cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing softly against her skin. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, his voice trembling with restraint. "Say the word and I will." No pressure, no expectations, just us as we are now. But if you don't, I can't promise I'll be able to hold back any longer. The silence stretched between them, heavy, waiting. Then Imani leaned into his touch, her voice barely more than a breath. I don't want you to stop. The admission shattered the last barrier. Malik pulled her against him, his lips crashing onto hers with hunger, the kiss fierce and consuming, years of control finally breaking. She responded with equal urgency, her hands clutching at him, her body molding to his as though it had always been meant to. The night swallowed them whole as they stumbled back toward the villa, their shadows joining into one across the cool sand. Behind them the ocean roared its approval, waves rising and falling in rhythm with the fire that had finally consumed them both. The 2 weeks on the island passed in a haze of passion and discovery, days filled with sunlight and laughter, nights lost to kisses and whispers in the dark. What began as reluctant proximity had become something neither of them could deny, a bond woven from fire and tenderness. And when the final evening arrived, Malik had prepared something Imani never expected. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, he led her by the hand down a secluded path to a hidden cove. Waiting for them was a table set directly on the sand, surrounded by flickering tiki torches that glowed against the growing darkness. The scent of the ocean mingled with the aroma of grilled lobster and champagne chilled in an ice bucket. Imani's eyes widened as she took it in. "What's all this?" she asked softly. Malik's smile held something she had never seen in him before, a touch of nervousness beneath his confidence. "Our last night here," he said quietly. "I wanted it to be special." The meal was exquisite, but Imani hardly noticed the food. She found herself memorizing every detail of him instead. The way the torchlight reflected in his eyes, the curve of his mouth when he laughed, the warmth in his gaze whenever it fell on her. Somewhere along these 2 weeks, this man who had been a stranger, even an enemy in her mind, had become something else entirely. "Penny for your thoughts," Malik said, reaching across to tuck a loose curl behind her ear. "I was just thinking how strange this is," she admitted, her voice soft. 2 weeks ago I was furious at the idea of being forced into this. And now, he prompted, his eyes searching hers. Her throat tightened. "Now I'm dreading leaving." Emotion flickered across his face, stripping away every layer of control. What if reality doesn't have to be what you expect? His hand slipped into his pocket, and when he drew it out, he held a small velvet box. Imani froze, her heart stumbling. "Malik, what are you—" He dropped to one knee in the sand, the flames of the torches dancing around him. His voice low but steady as he opened the box to reveal an emerald-cut diamond that caught the light like a shard of fire. "I know this began as a business deal," he said, his tone thick with emotion. "But these 2 weeks have shown me what I've been missing all my life. You challenge me. You inspire me. You make me laugh. And you set my soul on fire. I don't want a contract. I want you. Not for your family, not for your name, not for the legacy you carry. For you." Tears stung Imani's eyes as the weight of his words sank into her heart. "Imani Carter," he whispered, "will you marry me? Not for business, not for obligation, but because I have fallen completely in love with you." Her vision blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Are you sure?" she asked through trembling lips. "This isn't just the magic of the island speaking?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Malik replied. "I think I've been waiting for you without even knowing it." She pressed her hands to her mouth, her chest aching with a flood of emotion she could no longer deny. And then she nodded, her voice breaking into the night. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." He rose swiftly, sliding the ring onto her finger before gathering her into his arms, his lips claiming hers in a kiss that promised forever. Around them the waves kissed the shore, the firelight danced, and the universe itself seemed to pause in reverence for the moment. What began as a contract had transformed into a vow, spoken not on paper but in fire, in tears, and in the beating of 2 hearts that had finally found their match. The return from Jamaica was nothing like the departure. When Imani had first boarded Malik's jet, her heart had been filled with resistance and doubt. But now she carried a secret joy that glowed in her every step. The diamond on her finger sparkled in the sunlight as though announcing to the world that she belonged to him, and he to her. And soon the world itself would witness their union. The wedding took place in Atlanta, inside the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, a place steeped in heritage and pride. Outside, the air hummed with celebration, as black limousines lined the street and guests from every corner of business, art, and society filled the pews. The choir sang softly while golden light poured through the stained glass windows, casting the sanctuary in colors that felt almost divine. Imani stood in the back, her gown flowing like liquid silk, her veil a whisper of lace that framed her radiant face. Her heart thudded with both nerves and excitement. But when she caught her reflection in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. She was no longer the woman cornered by her father's demands, no longer the daughter forced into a bargain. She was a bride in love, walking toward a future she had chosen. The doors opened and the music swelled. The congregation rose to their feet as she stepped into the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. Jerome Carter, proud yet humbled, guided his daughter forward, his expression tight with emotion. For all his power and ambition, nothing compared to this moment, handing over his only child to a man who had proven worthy of her heart. At the altar, Malik waited, his black tuxedo sharp, his broad shoulders straight, but his eyes soft the moment they landed on her. He looked at her not as a business partner, not as an obligation, but as the love of his life. The world around them blurred. There was no crowd, no legacy, no expectation, only the silent vow that passed between them as she walked closer. The ceremony unfolded like a song. Vows were spoken not from duty but from devotion. Promises to honor and to cherish, to uplift and to protect, not because of family or legacy, but because they had found in each other something rare and unshakable. When the minister declared them husband and wife, Malik cupped her face and kissed her with reverence and passion, sealing the union not with paper, but with love witnessed by all. The reception shimmered with elegance and joy. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above as the newlyweds shared their first dance, the choir's voices soaring into the night. Friends toasted their love, families embraced, and the rhythm of drums and jazz filled the hall, reminding everyone present that this was not just a merger of names, but a celebration of culture, legacy, and new beginnings. Imani laughed freely as Malik spun her across the floor, her dress billowing like a wave. In his arms she felt both grounded and untouchable, and in that moment she knew their story was only beginning. What had started as an arrangement had transformed into a love strong enough to silence every doubt, powerful enough to carry them into the future. Marriage settled around Imani and Malik not as a weight but as a rhythm, a new life that blended passion with partnership. Their Atlanta penthouse overflowed with warmth, laughter, and the quiet intimacy of two people who had finally found home in each other. Mornings began with Malik reading the news at the breakfast table while Imani sipped her coffee, teasing him about his stubborn opinions. Afternoons often saw her at the gallery, building exhibits that celebrated black artistry, while Malik balanced boardrooms and contracts. Evenings belonged to them both. Dinners shared on the terrace, glasses of wine raised to victories large and small, kisses that stretched into late hours, proof that love had only deepened after vows. Yet within this harmony something unexpected bloomed. Weeks into their marriage, Imani began to notice subtle changes, a weariness that clung to her, a shift in appetite, a tenderness she could not ignore. At first she brushed it off, unwilling to entertain the thought. But when the morning sickness came, undeniable and insistent, she stood frozen in the bathroom with trembling hands clutching a small test. The result confirmed what her heart already knew. That evening she waited for him to return, her nerves tangled with anticipation. When Malik walked in, his tie loosened, exhaustion lining his features, she approached with cautious steps. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered, her voice trembling. He stilled immediately, his sharp gaze softening at the sight of her unease. She placed his hand gently on her stomach, her eyes glistening. "We're not just two anymore." For a moment he said nothing, his breath catching, his jaw tightening as the weight of her words sank in. Then emotion cracked through his composure, his hand trembling against her, his eyes burning with something unguarded. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. "A child," he murmured, awe and wonder threading through his voice. "Our child." Relief and joy washed over her as he lifted her off her feet, spinning her gently before pressing his forehead to hers. "Do you know what you've given me?" he whispered. "Legacy, yes, but more than that. You've given me life." From that night forward, their marriage shifted into something even greater, Malik became fiercely protective, insisting she rest when she worked too late, preparing meals when she grew tired, attending every doctor's appointment with a determination that surprised even her. At the same time, Imani flourished, her confidence blooming with the knowledge that she carried not just a child, but the embodiment of their love. The Carter and Johnson families, once bound by business, now gathered as kin, their differences fading in the face of the new life to come. What had begun as strategy had transformed into legacy, but not the kind her father once envisioned. This legacy was love itself, passed down into the heartbeat growing within her. Time moved swiftly, carrying them into a new season of life. The Atlanta skyline gave way to quieter mornings in their Maryland estate, a home surrounded by rolling fields and centuries-old oak trees, a place chosen not for its grandeur but for its roots in Black history and legacy. Within its walls, laughter echoed, the kind of laughter that came not from wealth or power but from love that had built something lasting. The day their child arrived, Malik never left Imani's side. He held her hand through every moment, his strength pouring into her when hers faltered, his voice steady when hers broke. When the cries of their newborn daughter filled the room, Malik's face crumpled with awe. He took the child gently in his arms, his powerful frame trembling as he whispered promises into the tiny bundle resting against his chest. Imani watched through tears, realizing that the man who had once walked into her life as a stranger, a proposition, had become not only her husband but the father of her child, the anchor of her soul. Parenthood unfolded with challenges, sleepless nights and moments of exhaustion, but it also brought joy unlike anything they had known. Malik, the man who commanded boardrooms, softened into a protector who learned to cradle a baby with tenderness, who sang lullabies in the quiet hours of dawn, who carried his daughter against his chest as though she were a crown he never wanted to set down. Imani flourished in her new role, balancing motherhood with her art, pouring her love into both her family and her passion. One evening, long after their daughter had fallen asleep, Malik sat with Imani on the porch. The stars stretched endlessly above them, the sound of crickets carrying on the breeze. He placed a leather-bound book in her lap. When she opened it, she found their original marriage contract tucked between the pages, the same document that had once felt like a prison. But across its surface, Malik had crossed out every clause, every condition, every cold demand. In their place, he had written only one vow in his own hand. For as long as I breathe, my love belongs to you. Her throat tightened as she looked at him, her eyes shimmering. You've rewritten everything, she whispered. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. No, Imani, you rewrote me. This life, this love, this family, none of it would exist without you. The contract was my past. You are my forever. Their lips met beneath the stars, not with urgency but with the quiet certainty of two souls who had found their home. The journey that began with duty and resistance had transformed into devotion and choice. Their legacy was no longer a company, a deal, or a name. It was the love they shared, the child they nurtured, the life they built side by side. And as the night settled around them, Malik and Imani Johnson knew with unshakable certainty that what had once been written in ink had now been written into eternity.